flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The meeting will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Roberts?
Here.
Trustee Sutker?
Here.
Trustee Ulrich is not here today. Trustee Bromberg?
Here.
Trustee Klein?
Here.
Trustee Gray Keeler?
Here.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Here we have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. Is there a motion? Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Gray Keeler. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody would like to have removed? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Roberts?
Aye.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Bromberg?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Trustee Gray Keeler?
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the motion passes. I would like to point out that with us this evening is Ross Mathey, who has heretofore been a member of the Economic Development Commission. In fact, I believe, Ross, you were one of the original members of the commission. And with this evening's vote, Ross will be taking a seat on the Plan Commission. Longtime member Dave Merrick, who served something like 25 years on the commission, if I remember correctly, he will no longer be serving. So, Ross, welcome. I think everybody is well aware that not only does Ross have a great background in economic development, but he's also a very accomplished banker and brings some very special skills to the Plan Commission. And so we're grateful for everything you do and appreciate it, and thank you for your volunteerism. And we'll try and find a heater case for you to get you started on the Plan Commission. Just ask Peter there. He may have one or two coming up for you that they delayed so Merrick would avoid that. So a gift from Dave. Next item on the agenda is report of our village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor Van Dusen, and good evening. Item A is regarding the 2017 tax levy abatement ordinance. The village is authorized to levy property taxes in the amount of $4.3 million to cover annual interest and principal payments for the 2009 A Series, 2000 B Series, 2013 A Series, and 2016 A Series of general obligation bonds. The village has maintained a long-standing policy of freezing the property tax levy in the amount of $15.4 million, and the village has already directed the Cook County Assessor to levy $13.4 million for general corporate purposes and pension funding for tax year 2017. This leaves a total of $1.978 million to be levied for the funding of principal and interest on outstanding bonds. At this time, a total of $2.389 million must be abated and communicated to the county assessor by March 31st. The remaining amount specified in the bond ordinances will be funded through tax increment financing, telecommunication taxes, and federal interest rebates. The authorizing ordinance is presented this evening for the first reading and review, with the second reading for mayor and board consideration at the next board meeting. If there's any questions, Julian Prindy is our finance director. He's at the podium, or I would be happy to answer those.
Are there any comments or questions? Trustee Roberts.
Is this matter of state law that we have to inform the county assessor? Is this basically what the essence of this ordinance is? Just to set out how much we're, in terms of our bonds, how much we're looking to levy? Is that kind of a notification to the county assessor? Is that basically what we're doing?
That's correct, trustee. Each bond ordinance, as the village issues debt, is communicated to the county at the time of the issuance. Each bond ordinance essentially sets out levy requirements for the 20 years or 15 years. Without village board action today, the county would levy the amount that's specified in those bond ordinances specifically. So column, the first column would be levied no matter what. In order to remain within that frozen property tax levy, we would have to actively abate every year.
Call the roll, please.
Oh,
We are not.
First reading, I'm sorry. That's right, first reading.
Okay, and then we'll move on to item B. Item B is an authorization of parameters ordinance for general obligation bonds, Series 2018A. For the 8,000 North redevelopment project, this is the upcoming project located at Oakton Street and Lincoln Avenue, the village intends to issue $9.9 million in general obligation bonds to fund necessary site improvements and the construction of a parking garage adjacent to this project. Eller's Municipal Advisors and Foley and Lardner have been engaged as advisors to assist in the process. The bonds will be issued as a taxable series with a 20-year repayment term. There will be an option to refinance after the initial 10 years. To proceed with the issuance, the adoption of a parameters ordinance is required by the village board. The ordinances will authorize Ellers to present the bonds in the competitive market while setting minimum terms to execute the new bonds. This authorizing ordinance is presented to the mayor and board for first reading and will be back on the agenda on the March 19th agenda for approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any comments or any questions? Of course.
If we can refinance after 10 years because of fluctuating interest rates, is there any, it has to be 10 years we're frozen in. Then after that, what increments do we have to stay in?
So the first 10 years is correct. We're frozen in by bond ordinance, would be required to hold that bond for 10 years. And then after that initial 10 years, we could come up with any term that we're comfortable repaying. It could be as little as 5 years, or we could go to the extent of an additional 5 years. We could pay it all at once, essentially, after that first 10-year term. Nothing limits us up until that call date, which is the first 10 years as required by the ordinance.
Oh, thank you.
Trustee Roberts.
Julian, could you just kind of walk us through what would be, we retained outside bond counsel and advisors, so what are the next steps in the process?
So and I should have brought the calendar, but essentially what happens now, trustee, is after the approval of the ordinance at the next board meeting, we present that to Ellers, which is our municipal advisor. They then prepare an official statement to take to market and solicit bids from underwriters that would want to buy our bonds. We have a target May 3rd date, I think, as the sales date. In between the approval of the ordinance and then that sales date, there's a few additional things we need to do. We would reach out to the rating agencies to receive a rating on these bonds. We would go back and forth with Ellers. Our outside bond counsel would issue an opinion on the bonds, both on the taxability and the fact that the village has the ability to pay, has the ability to tax. Ordinances get prepared up until that sale date. At that sale date, they will contact us to let us know the bids that have been received, and then one of 4 designated officials in the ordinance, 2 of 4 actually, will make the decision whether or not to proceed with the bonds on that sales date. If we proceed, final approval has been received, the bond counsel will issue the final documents, and we receive funding within days of that approval date.
And what is our current bond rating, and how would that impact the selling of these bonds?
The village is rated by both Moody's and Fitch to a very high prestigious rating, slightly below the very top AAA. But the issuing new bonds doesn't necessarily in and of itself impact a bond rating. Rating agencies look at where an entity is at the time that they issue bonds and do a comprehensive review of our financial policies, the amount of outstanding debt. Particularly in the last few years, they've taken a keen interest on the village's pension obligations and overall debt that our residents have as compared to other residents when you include overlapping debt, which is all public entities and the debt that they impose on their residents. So, the village has worked very hard to get up to those standards that would get us the AAA back. We for the everybody in the audience and the board, just a reminder, we lost to AAA by a very small margin when we issued the 2016 debt. And we're working very hard to get back to that standard. And it's predominantly due to the pension funding and due to the state mandates, the very strict funding requirements, the 2041 deadline, the fact that pension obligations continue to grow. The village continues to raise that funding, but because of investment and a slew of other factors, bond rating agencies look at that and weigh it heavily when they issue their rating. Whereas, we've been told by both Moody's and Fitch that every other factor in our financials is strong and is AAA worthy. There are these outstanding items that we pay a penalty, one for being in the state of Illinois and two for being in Cook County. So, but a long-winded answer to say that the debt alone won't make a difference. It's where the village is and how much we have done up to this point to work towards that.
A motion to secede would be in order.
Can I second it from this point?
And just one final, in your memo, it says these will be taxable. In most cases, aren't municipal bonds
Not taxable?
not taxable?
And I'm not an expert on the legality of the taxability or not. That's why we hire an outside bond
Sure,
counsel.
sure.
I believe there's the purpose of the bonds and whether or not 100% of them will be for public benefit rather than for some public and some private goes into that determination. And because this will go to fund the public garage, which will also have a private component to it, I believe to play it safe, the outside bond counsel has recommended that we issue these as taxable. It makes no difference to the village. There's a very slight premium we pay on interest rates. It not enough to make a significant difference, but that's the main issue.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? If not, call the roll, please.
This is also.
First reading.
Oh, first reading again, I'm sorry. I'm so used to it. Well, let's vote anyway. Let's do it
Was
just,
that the succession vote?
right, the motion to secede.
Items C and D of my report were approved under tonight's consent agenda, and that completes my report. Thank you.
Okay, McCarthy, you ready?
Here we go.
Next item is report of our corporation counsel temporarily, James McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. Good evening, everybody. I'm joined tonight by members of the Corporation Counsel's office. Items A, B, and C were ordinances on the consent agenda at the beginning of this evening, and they have been adopted. Item D is on the agenda for a first reading, and it'll be back on the March 19th, 2018 agenda for a second reading and adoption. This ordinance establishes special service area number 10 within the 3550 block of Lake Street. Early in the development of the village, construction standards and enforcement were not as strong as they are now, leaving some areas such as that in SSA number 10 with a ground surface and no curb or gutter. The purpose of the formation of the Skokie Special Service Area Number 10 in general is to provide special services in the form of public right-of-way improvements to the area of the 3550 block. It's basically Lake Street. Historically, fully improved streets, curbs, gutters, and drainage facilities were either installed by the developers, who then passed them on to the property owners, or by means of a special assessment paid directly to the adjoining property owners. Thus, it's in the public interest and the interest of the property owners in the area that the extensive upgrading of the public right-of-way be shared by the village and by the adjoining property owners. This would be accomplished by a levy of an annual tax not to exceed 1% of the equalized assessed value of the property in the special service area for a maximum of 10 years from the date of the ordinance. Village Ordinance Number 17-11-F-4335, proposing the creation of SSA number 10, was adopted by the board on November 20th, 2017, and the statutorily required public hearing was held on January 2nd, 2018. No objection petitions have been filed. Mayor Eric Cook, Director of Engineering, is available for any questions any of the trustees might have.
Like a good lawyer, I noticed you passed it off to the engineering department.
That's right. The man with the plan.
Are there any comments or questions of Eric?
I can answer for Jim, too.
And I won't ask for a vote this time.
That's right.
All right.
Thank you, Eric. Excellent report.
And Mayor, that concludes my report for the evening.
Thank you. Next item is a matter of unfinished business, the one-year action plan of the CDBG program. Carrie Haberstich.
Right. Oh. We'll hide that, hopefully. Yep, I can just grab that. There we go. Good evening. All right, so tonight's public hearing is being conducted to obtain final input to the village's Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, one-year action plan for program year 18, which is also known as fiscal year 19. Plan approval, public hearings are usually held in March of each year, following the 3 other hearings held in the preceding months of December, January, and February. This hearing will conclude with the board's formal consideration and anticipated approval of the action plan prior to the submittal of the plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. This hearing was legally advertised in a local newspaper on February 1st and 8th, including a list of the statutory goals of the CDBG program and the proposed projects and activities for the action plan. Preliminary draft copies of the plan were available at Village Hall and the Public Library for a 30-day public review period. No comments were submitted by the public unless we have some this evening. Just a quick overview. We had 3 meetings. Tonight is hopefully the final hearing for this action plan. As I go over some of the details later, hopefully we won't drop below a certain threshold where I'll have to come back in the spring or summer. The purpose of a 5-year consolidated plan, so we're implementing a segment of that plan, is essentially a comprehensive plan of sorts for the CDBG program to address the 3 primary goals of the 1974 Housing and Community Development Act, which includes provide decent housing, provide a suitable living environment, and expand economic opportunities. And so the purpose of the one-year plan is an annual application to HUD for entitlement funding and to distribute the funds to address village goals and objectives. And the plan we're considering tonight is the 4th of the 5 years for the 5-year plan we just mentioned previously. So the vision statement of our 5-year plan, Skokie's CDBG program will provide a better quality of life for low and moderate income residents through bricks and mortar projects and service activities. And the goals, we have 5 goals broken down by capital improvements, services, and then program planning and administration. So for capital improvements, all of the projects and activities in our action plan address at least one of the objectives that I'll list now and in future slides. To make housing affordable, accessible, and sustainable through owner-occupied homes like the home improvement program, affordable rental apartments, helping the elderly and frail elderly, special needs residents, and energy efficiency in buildings. Improve public infrastructure such as street resurfacing projects and sidewalk replacement projects. And then also improve facilities like construction and rehabilitation projects so organizations can provide improved or expanded or more affordable services with other funding sources. For services, provide financial assistance for programs and services including counseling, children and youth, seniors being able to age in place, special needs, dental care, financial counseling, immigrant resettlement, interpretation, and multilingual staff, and then housing-related services, including transitional housing this year. And then for planning administration, the typical planning activities such as the 5-year and 1-year plans, the annual year-end report, and then just day-to-day activities. And the funding focus is to help Skokie's most vulnerable residents either directly or via not-for-profit organizations. Again, since we do not know our funding entitlement amount at this time, so based on the budget that we discussed at last month's meeting, we're still estimating an entitlement amount of $500,000, over 11,000 unallocated funds from past years to be used, and then over 15,000 in program income for a grand total of, oh boy, hide that again, for a grand total of over 527,000. And we're building in some flexibility since we don't know that funding amount, and the flexibility is in hopes that we'll be able to set the final budget without needing to return to you, and make things more efficient and being able to get the program going as soon after May 1st as possible. So the flexibility, a substantial amendment to the action plan will be required if we receive entitlement funding less than $400,000. We will not pursue an entitlement if we receive entitlement funding in excess of $600,000. So this is a flexibility of 20%. We increased the amount this year just to make sure that it's more to make sure that if we receive less than $500,000 that we are able to move the program forward without needing to come back and do another planning process again. And so if the funding is less than $500,000, we'll do proportional across-the-board adjustments. We won't do any reductions less than 80% of the budget amounts that were set last month, and no amount will be less than $3,000. We have a few activities where we're right at $3,000, so we'll hold them and share the reduction accordingly with the other projects or activities. And we have some previously unallocated funding that we could put towards like the construction projects. So if it's just a small amount, less than $500,000, like street resurfacing or group home improvements, we might be able to fill in that gap and keep the budget as is for the construction-related projects. And if the entitlement funding is greater than $500,000, we will, as long as it's at least $520,000, we will put $3,000 towards the Meals at Home program. And the balance of the 15% services cap we'll put towards the social worker position. And then any remaining balance beyond that we'll put in the home improvement program. Our HUD representative asked that we basically assign every dollar that we receive towards a project or activity, and not just kind of leave it in kind of like this off to the side funding to be reprogrammed in the future. So we can reprogram it, we just need to assign it to something specific this year. And so the next steps, hopefully a village board approval of the action plan tonight. We will be submitting the action plan after March 17th, that's our typical date, but absolutely no later than August 16th. An opinion came out about that, I believe, last week. So August 16th is the date that we'll submit, even if we don't know our entitlement funding. And so we're hoping to begin as close as May 1st as possible, but it could be October 2nd, which is like the day after the federal fiscal year begins. Any questions?
Motion to approve the action plan for this year. Trustee Gray Keeler, seconded by Trustee Klein. Are there any comments or any questions? Trustee Roberts.
Carrie, I'm very proud of you and the work the staff has done on this. I think this represents Skokie at its finest as you help low and moderate income folks in our town. I especially appreciate on page 48 and 49 that you try to outline for us and provide some future opportunities possibly for affordable housing in different sites around the, so how are we doing on our affordable housing right now for our citizens, from your perspective?
I guess going towards our existing estimate of about 14.6 I believe, percent of our housing stock is affordable. There are thresholds or considerations at the federal level and also at the state of Illinois level. And from the perspective of Illinois, the minimum any community should have in Illinois is 10%, so we exceed that threshold. But since we're less than 20% affordable, we could, I guess, do better and could make strides in getting towards that 20%. As it was explained to me about 3 or 4 years ago from a staff member at IDA, that we could be forced to have some sort of affordable housing development in Skokie since we're under that 20% threshold. But I think it's great that we're above 10%, and other suburbs are below that threshold as well. So, and I think we'll just continue to review the affordable housing issue in Skokie, and related to one of the items in our action plan, we will at least look into our analysis of impediments to fair housing in Skokie as we prepare our next 5-year plan. So we'll do that like in the summer of 2019.
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Roberts,
Aye.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Bromberg,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Trustee Gray Keeler,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Next item are two reports from our Plan Commission, Chairman Paul Luke with Peter Pyer.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. First case tonight is case 2017-59P, site plan approval for 3800 Dempster Street, or better known as the Oratora Synagogue. At the February 1st meeting of the Plan Commission, we reviewed the petitioner's request for a site plan approval at 3800 Dempster Street for a lot over 1 acre in size in a B2 commercial zoning district, as required by Chapter 118-58 of the Skokie Village Code, and relief from 118-43, Section 3B, to continue a pre-existing rear yard setback not abutting an alley and abutting a R1 single-family zoning district that is less than 16 feet. This request only covers the actual site plan. The proposed synagogue remodeling and addition will combine 2 adjacent separate buildings into one unified facility, provide a new modern stone facade, improve the east and west parking lots and main entry plaza at Hamlin Street, and provide new landscaping around the building and improve the site lighting. The proposed development will result in a 28,440 square foot building and 48 parking spaces. The staff reported that the site plan removes a curb cut on Dempster Street, which will improve channelization of vehicles at the Dempster Street driveway, also significantly improves the landscaping on the site, and more efficiently uses the parking lot. Bringing more of the building to the Dempster Street right-of-way line will also likely have a traffic calming effect. The rear yard relief request is an acknowledgement of a mostly pre-existing condition along the north side of the building, with the new building extension being less than 20 feet west of the existing building. Staff also discovered during the review of the case that relief is needed from Chapter 82-28, Section B1B of the sign code, to allow a wall sign facing the parking lot, which would only be permitted if the lot was less than 1 acre in size, or if the occupant does not have street frontage. Staff supported the request relief since the main entrance is on the west side of the building, and the other buildings on that block are on lots less than 1 acre and have signs. No interested parties spoke at the case. The Appearance Commission approved the proposed building and landscaping and signage at their meeting of November 8th, 2017. Plan Commission request approval of the petitioner's request, and also to recommend that relief be granted from the following. Chapter 118-14, 118-143, Section 3B of the Village Code to continue a pre-existing rear yard setback, and also relief from Section 82-28B1B of the sign code.
There are two cases. First one is Plan Commission Case 2017-59P, Site Plan Approval. A motion would be in order. Trustee Bromberg, seconded by Trustee Gray Keeler. Are there comments or questions? Trustee Roberts.
Paul, you said that no one spoke at the case? Wasn't there some discussion?
Not
of,
on the site plan approval.
Okay, on the other case?
Yes.
Are we talking about
That comes
both?
up next.
Okay.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Roberts.
Aye.
Trustee Sutker.
Aye.
Trustee Bromberg.
Aye.
Trustee Klein.
Aye.
Trustee Gray Keeler.
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, motion passes. The next is Plan Commission Case 2017-60P, Special Use Permit.
Yes, also at 3800 Dempster Street. Also at the February 1st meeting of the Plan Commission, we reviewed the petitioner's request for a special use permit to expand a religious assembly use in the 3800 address on Dempster Street and relief from the following sections of the Village Code, marked as Section 118-218-2, to reduce the required off-street motor vehicle parking from 188 to 48. Section Chapter 118-222 to proportionally reduce the required bike parking and any other relief discovered. Originally remodeled in 1992, the congregation occupied a facility of approximately 14,700 square feet. This was expanded to 20,600 square feet in 2005. When the congregation acquired the adjoining Pucci's building, this facility, which is separate from the original synagogue, houses a second sanctuary and classroom facility. The proposed remodeling and addition will combine the two separate buildings into one unified facility of 28,440 square feet. The project will improve the main and west sanctuaries as well as the small sanctuary and library that are used for daily observance and education. The project will further provide additional classrooms, improved offices, welfare, and social hall facilities. There's no change in occupancy, use, or function as a result of these improvements. Central to the scope of the project is the unification of various activities and facilities that presently are housed in separate buildings. As part of the remodeling and expansion, a new modern institutional quality with stone facade will replace a mix of commercial storefronts of masonry and stone finishes. As an Orthodox Jewish institution, congregants are prohibited from driving to the facility on the Sabbath, sundown Friday through sundown Saturday, as well on the major holidays, such that there will be no change in the traffic conditions due to the remodeling of the building. Bicycle parking will be provided as part of the site improvements, even though use of bicycles will be prohibited on the Sabbath and religious education for children is not normally provided on site. As part of the remodeling work, the facilities will have improved fire protection and will be fully sprinklered with alarm tied to the Skokie Fire Department. Similarly, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems will be designed in accordance with current energy code, and the kitchen facilities will be upgraded to comply with the community's health code requirements. The petitioner contends upon completion, Congregation Ortero will be a better neighbor, and the improvements will enhance the general welfare of the community, improving property values. Staff supported the expansion with some limits. Getting to the interested party. One neighbor had testified that the synagogue was not a good neighbor, stating on-site and on-street parking concerns and providing photographs to the commission. She also felt that the cumulative effects of other commercial parking accommodations in the area, including long-term commercial vehicle parking in public parking lots, compound the problem. She also contended that the police department is not a good way to control the street parking, even though the police ticket the cars, the violations get dismissed on religious observances. She was referring to on snow days when the cars have to be moved. She contends that the police, although they ticket the cars, the tickets are dismissed. After the meeting, I talked to the Corporation Council and the Mayor's office, and I was told that emphatically this was not the case. And unfortunately, I do not have the woman's contact information, and I do not see her in the audience tonight to inform her of that. She also felt that it's an inconvenience to homeowners because less than 1/4 of the homes have garages and even less have driveways. She asked that before allowing the expansion, the village should address the parking problem. 2 other neighbors spoke in support of the requested petition, noting that the aesthetic improvements of the building, that high holidays and other special events that might occur in the building do not coincide with the infrequency of parking problems. The Plan Commission, therefore, on a vote of 5 ayes and no nays and 4 members absent, recommends approval of the special use.
Thank you. A motion on Plan Commission Case 2017-60P, special use permit for 3800 Dempster Street is in order. Trustee Sutker, seconded by Trustee Roberts. Are there any comments or questions on the special use permit? Trustee Roberts.
But that was the essence of my question, Paul. So you did some further investigation that was a false allegation?
Yes, it was a false allegation.
About the traffic tickets being dismissed?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Please call the roll.
Trustee Roberts.
Aye.
Trustee Sutker.
Aye.
Trustee Bromberg.
Aye.
Trustee Klein.
Aye.
Trustee Gray Keeler.
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes.
That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is a matter of citizen comment. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board? If not, I'm going to take a moment for citizen comments.
There might be one that's,
Was there,
I don't know if that gentleman.
did you wish to address the board? Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, no, congratulations. Yesterday was a very proud moment for Skokie and for me. The Loyola Ramblers won the championship. And you might wonder, I'm a graduate, proud to be of Loyola.
So am I, Mayor.
So am I.
See? See? There you go. Now, what I want to ask, does anybody know the direct connection between Loyola basketball and Skokie? The last time Loyola won the national championship, the only time, 1963, I was not attending Loyola at the time. George Ireland was the coach, and he lived in Skokie. I haven't been able to double-check it, but I believe, at least I've been told, he was a member of the Plan Commission. And when he retired, he coached basketball for developmentally disabled children for the Center for Enriched Living in Skokie, and led them to an undefeated inaugural season in 1979. But in keeping with the spirit of the village, Ireland was also a pioneer in civil rights. You know, 63, a year before the Civil Rights Act, and he was the first coach of a major basketball program to have not just 1, but 4 and 5 African Americans playing on the team. And this was at a time when it was rare for any team to have more than 1 African American player. So he won the national championship. So we expect that they're going to do it again this year. No pressure on the Ramblers. And so with that little Skokie moment, motion to adjourn.
Go Ramblers.
Go Ramblers.
The executive director of the Center for Rich Living lives in Skokie.
Yes. She hasn't applied for 3 years.